Hello, everybody. I'm Erica Lukes, your host on Expanding Frontiers. You can go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to check out our website to see the latest on all of our blog posts. And let me tell you, we have been busy doing some great stuff. Tonight is going to be a fun show. I have got my partner in crime, my research colleague, Jack Brewer, here, and he has been very busy. We've both been very busy. I'm just going to add Jack to the stream. Jack, good evening.
Hello.
And I want to just thank everybody really quickly. Hey, Phil, nice to see you. Jim, Michael, thank you for your support. And King Milfart, thank you for the donation, the super sticker. And also, I want to thank, I know that Peter Shelley should be in here soon. I want to thank Mario and all of my friends for supporting the show and also for supporting Expanding Frontiers Research, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to doing great investigative work, doing FOIA requests, and doing that very transparently. So thank you very much for supporting us. And I've missed all of you. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. But Jack, what have you been up to lately, besides a lot of research?
Oh, you know it. I have been working on FOIA requests and coordinating some different things with agencies. Great to see everyone in chat. We've got lots of stuff to discuss tonight. Eric and I have been working on blog posts. Sometimes she's a co-author of them, sometimes not, but she's always involved in the blog posts and the different aspects of expanding frontiers. We've been setting up the archive, working on potential more videos for the future, just lots of fun and exciting things going on.
Yes, we love to dig into things, and I really am thrilled about not only the archive but some of the work that we're doing. And I want to, and hey Drew, nice to see you, Steve. And I want to just take a second to talk a little bit about King Milkfart. I love that name, and that was only harassment. Let me just say, on Twitter, there is, if you get into the UFO Twitter weeds, which I did for one moment and then decided that it was not a healthy place for me to be, there has been an ongoing campaign of harassment by several people in the subject on UFO Twitter on social media. And there was a great video that was done to expose some of the things that are happening behind the scenes to people that had just gotten on UFO Twitter and that were wanting to do good things and look into a subject and were excited about it. And so in the show notes, I'll post that link, but I think it's really good to see other people standing up to this type of harassment. It's very, very easy, especially in this subject, to become isolated. And, you don't really, you've got all these great friends that you've met in an online community, but you've never met them in person. And some of the time you don't know who these people are, or they're pretending, or they're, they pretend that they have good motivations and, hey, let's have this, chat behind the scenes, and you're getting insider information. And in all actuality, they're either mentally ill people, or they're people that have a specific agenda. And either one of those scenarios, if you get into that, it can be very dangerous for you. And it's very sad, as I've talked a lot about on the show, so is Jack, that there are people who are vulnerable, who are being manipulated and targeted by specific people. That is incredibly dangerous. It is wrong, morally, ethically. And I do believe, I hope that through people speaking up about the targeting and the harassment on UFO Twitter, that other officials, government officials, investigative, law enforcement will look into this and take proper steps. So make sure, if you do have anything like this happening to you on social media, that you inform law enforcement. Is really important, but also it's great to have this group of people coming together, speaking out. That's what we need to do, and nobody should be isolated. So let me just want to say that for a minute and go out there. So thank you, Jack, for letting me go off there.
Yeah, sure. I've spoken, as you alluded to, on here before about people feel like they know us better than we know them, especially someone like you, Erica, that has been visible for a long time. I mean, you have audience members that have been following you for years that not only, like in my circumstances, they've read my stuff, but with you, they've been seeing your face, they see your mannerisms, they hear your voice on podcasts and video, and feel like they know you or know us much better than we feel acquainted with them. And sometimes people don't understand that, and they'll reach out with screen names, and we just don't have any way of knowing who they are or how many different screen names they may have. They may, these may be some of the same people that harass us under other circumstances and different screen names. And as you mentioned, a best case scenario is that they're a little confused about things, or that they don't understand the importance of us knowing who they are, or it's not even important that we know who they are, but it's important as individuals that we introduce ourselves to people that we expect to have relationships with, or have some type of significant or meaningful interactions. And so, yeah, in those scenarios, I mean, it's best case that they're just emotionally distressed and don't understand how complicated some of this is, or that people intentionally deceive others through this topic. And, more nefarious circumstances and scenarios involve intentional deception and just sadistic behavior, and you name it, you can find it. And so, yeah, your point is very well taken.
Yeah, thank you. And it is really, I think because the UFO world is the wild, wild west, and there's never been any, nobody's ever been held to standards, that makes it difficult, and it for everybody involved. And it's just a breeding ground for bad behavior, for for subversive groups, people like Lou Elizondo and his band of merry men who like to target and harass people. And so it is really interesting, and it's really sad, and people need to understand, like if somebody is talking about like a figure in the subject who is DMing you on Twitter and talking about a specific individual in a very pretty awful way, those types of behaviors too, and that's a repeated thing, those types of behaviors need to be called out as well, because that's not good. And chances are that person has that's a pretty typical pattern that we see. I know that Stephen Greenstreet has done a little bit about some of the harassment, things that he had been receiving at the hands of certain people. So I think it is good that where people are talking about it. That's really important, and let's definitely keep that up, because there are really wonderful people that just want to enjoy the subject. They want to learn things, and they get kind of pushed into these corners and go down very dark holes. And then the same thing with like QAnon, that type of thing. People lose friendships, they lose their families, they lose their job. There are very serious repercussions to some of these things. And it also can be very easy as well to push somebody into kind of like a cult mindset. And I really do feel that a lot of these things can be they are a cult.
Yeah, I would certainly second that is a salient point that needs to be addressed. We might as well. I think that kind of segues us into a good starting point for tonight. Might be Ronilyn McDonald's honors thesis, if you're in agreement.
Yes, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, all right. As some people know, we've launched an online archive, and a significant part of that is the Ann Druffel special collection. And that was generously donated by Alice Druffel and the Druffel family. And Erica has been taking care of that and scanning select pieces of it to put online. And Ronilyn McDonald did an honors thesis in 1967 while earning a bachelor's in psychology at the University of Arizona. And that thesis is included in the Ann Druffel Special Collection. The name of the thesis is Psychological Aspects of Unidentified Flying Objects. And one of the things that Ronilyn goes into is what she termed, I'm sure it was a culturally accepted term at the time, was the crackpot element of ufology. And anyone that's read much mid-20th century, 1970s literature is aware that was a more commonly used term at that time. And what she quotes some different authors and researchers as working on this element, this crackpot element, was different things that make up the crackpot, different characteristics the individual will have, as well as the groups that she viewed as crackpot or dubious groups or cults. I should point out as well that Ronilyn was very much open to the idea that there was a small percentage of UFO reports that defied conclusive explanation. However, that would not keep her from accurately pointing out all of these different subsections and dynamics that make up the whole of what we might call ufology, as Erica opened the show with and has been talking about tonight. Among the characteristics that she cited as making up the erratic, for lack of a better term, elements of ufology and the cults was things that very much are still alive today, and such as leaders that can't be questioned, leaders that enforce consequences against members of their following that do question them, that they will be promoted through the ranks or demoted and cast out and become an object of the criticism as punishment for different things. And one of the things that really stood out to me as well was that Ronilyn quoted a researcher that noted that the crackpot finds his own discoveries to just be earth-shaking, that it's just so important and significant that there's so much self-importance wrapped up in them. And she also noted that, and this very much reminded me of the Mutual UFO Network over the decades, and I really can't say still today because I don't have much association with them, but based on the lack of important information that I hear about, just the fact I don't hear anything relevant would make me think this continues to be true. That she pointed out that it's the things these groups talk about and do has to be unverifiable and unintelligible and can't be gotten under a glass, and just by their nature that is how they operate, along with the other characteristics. And this very much makes them cult-like, if not a cult. Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely very, very interesting when you start looking around and you look at, the cult-like behavior of Stephen Greer's disciples, followers. Even, you could say that about Skinwalker Ranch and some of the, people that are so willing to die by this misinformation that they're getting and going out and defending people all over the place. That, when again, there's nothing substantial. It's just that people are being made to feel special because they think that they've got an inside track. And that's definitely a way that somebody targets an individual and then grooms them. Nothing could say that more than what we're seeing in Utah. We're going to talk a little bit about this later, but with Tim Ballard from Operation Underground Railroad and some of the things that he was doing along with the Attorney General, Sean Reyes. So very interesting things going on there, but it is important to understand, the characteristics as she points out in this thesis, which is just it's a wonderful thing. I was so excited when I found that, and Jan Aldrich was here when we made that discovery, and we were both very excited because she looks at things so. She is brilliant in the way that she puts this together, and from her lens as the daughter of Dr. James McDonald, it really is an interesting insight.
Yes, it is interesting. There's some very intriguing examples of context there that, given it's written in 1967, and she makes reference to some things that we would later come to know as classic cases that at that point in time were relatively current events. So it's interesting to hear her take on them, like circumstances that were later virtually, mythologized, for lack of a better term, made legendary by John Keel, and the Mothman prophecies were current events at the time she was writing about them. And there's other Easter eggs in there as well that are fun and interesting to hear an educated person's perception of when they were happening, without all these years of watching movies and reading and that kind of thing involved in as well. And another thing that I thought was pretty interesting as far as occults go and the occult was she quoted Buckner in calling UFO groups, like at the time they were flying saucer clubs, but would later be better known, and I think is still applicable to Mutual UFO Network and some things like that, some organizations like that, was that Buckner felt the most important thing to know about them was that the people that operate them were already operating in the occult world when they decided to hook their wagon to the UFO star, so to speak. And that he called them open door cults in that way, and that anyone with a cult interest, or what today we might call new age or even open-minded under the guise of spirituality or something like that, is just welcomed with open arms, as long as they would have something positive to say about UFOs and would support the party line of whatever the organization wants to promote, whether it was the extraterrestrial hypothesis or something like that. And so it's really interesting to me to see that in that way, there is like just completely stagnant UFO research over all these decades, that it really hasn't gone anywhere. The people that claim they're doing it, the majority still operate under these circumstances and are as likely to be into channeling and other types of unverified phenomena as they are to want to speak rationally about UFOs. And I'll give a bit of a disclaimer here that there are organizations and people doing good work. We have Paul Carr and Marcia Barnhart on from Aerial Phenomena Investigations, and they do good work. They don't sensationalize things. Yet, by and large, over the long haul, um, there seems to be a very, very small percentage of cases and people that uh, by any means justify the amount of resources and attention that has gone into the topic from my point of view.
Right. Absolutely. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Alien Scientist. Thank you for your nice comments. And he says, please hit the like button and leave a comment to help push the algorithms, which they don't like people exposing real truth. And so that's really important. And we need to get definitely the show out there a little bit more. Some of these other people who've come out of nowhere certainly know how to do that. And that's something that I need to work on specifically, because it is important to get this message out to people. So people understand that there is something you can, it is a knowledgeable source. So thank you, Alien Scientist, for making that comment. I appreciate that. So yeah, and let's keep talking a little bit about the cults, and then also the thesis. I mean, is there anything else that stands out to you about some of the ideas that she expressed?
She is a talented writer. She makes her points. She argues her points well. I think that over time, some of her arguments about a percentage of cases that defied explanations, I think over time and the advancing of the psychological paradigm, I think there may be more potential explanations available than there were at her time. But this by no means devalues her efforts, or I don't think, in that she was part of moving that paradigm forward, in that she pointed out the circumstances that needed to be addressed and needed to have better understandings around them, such as how is it that otherwise functional people who are not crackpots, who do not fit those descriptions and do not demonstrate those behaviors, how is it that those kind of people can be influenced or perceive themselves to have had extraordinary encounters that they talk about as sincere and as they believe them, and while still leaving room that perhaps there is some form of truth in there somewhere, some type of phenomena that may be causing these perceptions. The psychological paradigm has advanced to better understand how people can just be wrong about the things they're saying and perceiving than was known at the time that Ronilyn's thesis was written.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you. That's great. And I'm sitting here just thinking about, and for some reason, Bigelow popped into my mind, and I want to just say that it is, for me now, looking back on things, seeing the way that data can be captured and manipulated. I mean, I think, was that potentially the case back in the day, with NICAP and some of these other UFO organizations? Was that the end game for Bigelow and his data collecting spree? Is that, what people are actually doing with data, is learning how to manipulate specific groups of people? I mean, I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that's a fascinating. One of these days, we do need to get somebody on here, a data scientist, somebody that can talk a little bit about that, because and I'm sorry to get off on this tangent, I apologize, but while I'm thinking about it, it is, people always assume that with, UFO information, it's all about looking for a single case and the mothership. And in my opinion, that's not what it's about behind the scenes. It's about collecting information on the way people behave. So that's just my thought. I'm sorry for going
Yeah,
on there.
I could add a bit to that as well. That one of the things I noticed in Ronilyn's thesis was that she expressed a certain empathy for NICAP investigators and quoted Richard Hall 2 or 3 times. And I can appreciate that. My research into NICAP further or indicated to me that the very people she was describing as crackpots and unreliable had a lot to do with the organizing of NICAP, and that was very much a point of contention with Donald Kehoe and Richard Hall later, was that there were people very much into the contactee movement and psychic movements and different things that Ronilyn described aptly, correctly, as unreliable and not verified, that were big NICAP supporters and organizers. So, like, in other words, the best bet at the time for solid investigation had still come out of what, by her own definition, or Buckner's anyway, was an open door cult. It's hard to get around that it just comes with the territory that we, one compromise at a time, we move off of verifiable, credible information in the pursuit of open-mindedness and tolerance. And you go too far with that, you're just Edgar Casey meetings or something.
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting how all of that. I've got a few of his books here as well, with Anne's collection and then things I've collected over the years. But it is really interesting to see how some of those things, they all overlap, and they all have commonalities. And that's what I want to just talk a little bit about while we're talking about cults, because we've got a couple of them we're going to talk about tonight. Ramtha comes to mind, Jay-Z Knight. But it is important, I think, for all of us to understand that like the characteristics of a cult are authoritarian control, extremist beliefs, isolation from society, and veneration of a single individual. And so it's, that seems to be, what we've seen that repeatedly in the UFO world. And that I really feel, I'm glad that more people are opening their minds to that fact. And like I mentioned, just talking about that, and hi Tupacabra, I see you there, and great job on kind of exposing some of this as well. So thank you. And I just want to catch up with everybody, because a lot of new people have joined the chat. So thank you guys all for being here tonight. So yeah, the cult thing is interesting, and Ronilyn was an interesting individual. Is an interesting individual. I do believe that she is still alive, and I would love to talk with her sometime. She was very politically active and cared very deeply about causes that she was involved with, just like her mother. Betsy McDonald was a very politically active human being. So it is interesting. We'll put the feelers out there, and hopefully we can interview her at some point in time.
Yes, I found her interesting as well, and uh, seemed like someone I would want to know as I read her paper. And I did searches through newspapers.com, and the more recent things that we located on her were her letters to the editor in different newspapers about the political and social issues that were important to her. So yeah, she does seem like an interesting person indeed. Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, thanks for the nice comment, Chupacabra. Thank you. And it's fascinating. I love this is one thing I love about the archive, the Expanding Frontiers Research Archive, is like there's so many hidden gems. Like I can go in there, and I do go in there every day, and I'm pulling out, I have files and files in my arms, and I'm just looking through all of them and seeing, these personal correspondence that no one has ever seen except for the two people involved in the correspondence. And then seeing something like this thesis and looking at, the private notebooks that Jim McDonald had left and things like that, or seeing pictures of his garage and things when Ann Druffel was out there. There's so many incredible things involved with this archive. And so on that note, I want to say, click like, subscribe, make sure that you are sharing information about this, and help support what we're doing with the archive, with the investigative work that we're involved with. So I just had to put that in there.
I'll do my commercial too.
Okay.
One of the things that Erica and I do, and we touch base with Barry Greenwood and discuss it with him as well, is in our FOIA work, we seek law enforcement records. And this, as we segue into the Ramtha material, one of the ways this came about was through Erica recommended, let's see what we can find out about Ramtha and Jay-Z Knight. That's been a force to be reckoned with over the years. And initially, we sent a FOIA to the FBI, and they only had a couple of pages. But one of those pages mentioned that the FBI had been in touch with the Thurston County, Washington Sheriff's Office, and that the Sheriff's Office told the FBI that it was aware of the Ramtha group. And so that alerted us to send a FOIA request to the Thurston County Sheriff's Office. And that turned up a lot of material. And we've now been going back with some of the hits we got from the FBI, as well as in new material, and asking local law enforcement as well as the FBI and national agencies. And we're getting quite a significant amount of response, and there is cost involved with many of the local law enforcement agencies. So I will echo Erica's plea to go to our webpage, expandingfrontiersresearch.org, click on the orange tab button that says donate, and it is secure through PayPal, goes right to Expanding Frontiers, and your donations are used to help with our FOIA work, maintain the websites and the archive that the archive is on, and as we continue to add to that, and pay for these records that we're obtaining and sharing, video production, all of that is what your donations will be used for. So I would appreciate it, and will ask that if you find this interesting and entertaining, and if you benefit from it, to please consider, if you're in a position to do so, joining those that financially support it. Erica has pulled up our blog post on the sheriff's office releases records on the Ramtha compound. And what we found through local law enforcement records was that they have an ongoing situation that regularly requires law enforcement protection and interaction of people that try to gain access to Jay-Z Knight's property. And for those that may not know, Jay-Z Knight is a pseudonym that's used by Judith Darlene Hampton. She was born Judith Darlene Hampton, interestingly enough, in Roswell, New Mexico in the mid-20th century.
Yep, that's really interesting.
It is, isn't it? And she later claimed that she first interacted with Ramtha in her kitchen in 1977. And she went on to write a book about it. She claims to channel Ramtha. She called herself Jay-Z Knight. She was big on the 1980s television talk show circuit. She's launched a corporation named JZK Inc. And she's even gotten her claims to exclusivity of Ramtha to hold up in court. She has successfully defended it when a former student wanted to claim some contact with Ramtha, if I recall correctly. And she claims that Ramtha is a 35,000-year-old warrior that fought with the mythological continent of Atlantis. And last known, she was residing in a 12,800 square foot home on the grounds of her Ramtha compound there in Thurston County, Washington. And it's called a school, the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. It's attended by adults and people that want to learn about what Ramtha can apparently tell them, or purportedly tell them. And it became the focus of the Southern Poverty Law Center because Ms. Knight had videos leak of what some writers and newspapers describe as drunken, profane rants. They drink a lot of wine during some of these gatherings. I've talked to people personally that have visited it that describe to me this auditorium-like setting that she brings people into, and then she'll take the stage. And reportedly, there's a lot of alcohol consumption that goes on. And in some of these videos that were released, they were bigoted and anti-Semitic.
Right.
And go ahead if you had.
Yeah, no, I mean, they were, yeah. And I'm not sure if you can still find some of them, because I think that she went to great lengths to get them removed from the internet. There've got to be somewhere. Hey, Rachel, nice to see you. But, I remember watching them a few years back, when I found out that she was involved with, she was a donor to MUFON, which I thought was crazy. Not really, now that I think about things, but watching these videos, I mean, it was just I guess if you can claim that you're a channeler, you can get up there and say whatever you want, apparently, and make money doing it, which is really disturbing. So,
Yeah, like I didn't say it. It was Ramtha. It's kind of humorous in an odd sort of way. But this is exactly the kind of thing that Ronilyn was writing about, 20, 30, 40 years prior, and that MUFON acted as an open door cult for Jay-Z Knight to bring her believers and followers in, as long as she would have something to say about UFOs and bring money. And Newsweek, in an article that Erica Lukes was interviewed for comment as well, they reported in 2018 that deep pocketed donors were causing actually a lot of resignations among MUFON personnel that were very much opposed to what they saw as a sellout to these donors to bring in the bigotry and the unscientific, unverified beliefs and that type of thing. But it was very much what Ronilyn had described was happening in the 1960s, that if you had uh, a paranormal or cult line to sell, if you would just endorse saucers in some way, shape, or form, saucer groups would absolutely hand you a mic and tell you to have at it. Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting to see how all of these things just go hand in hand, and to have, I think we put up some great blog posts lately about Ramtha, Jay-Z Knight, about Ronilyn, and things. And I would definitely recommend for everybody who you haven't gone to the website expandingfrontiersresearch.org to do so and read the blogs that we put out, because this gives you an insight into organizations and people who are selling ideas that are not necessarily in the best interest of us or the subject matter for that matter. So it is I'm really proud of the work that we have done in our organization. So thanks,
Yeah,
Jack.
yeah, I am too. And it was a great initiative on your part to want to see what we could learn about the events surrounding Ms. Knight, because she is interesting in herself, her and her path and the interactions with MUFON and the things that happen. But then what we learned from uh, requesting through the FOIA, the law enforcement records, was an ongoing pattern of people that might be considered a vulnerable population that would attend her school or be employed at her school or both, or just become obsessed with it. We could reasonably presume some of these people may have been donors as well, that would just want to access the property, and would then tell law enforcement irrational, non sequitur reasons. They often would not really be able to explain coherently what they were doing. And there were dozens of these reports. The first one that I just randomly clicked on when I first downloaded it, I knew I wasn't going to read through them all at that point in time. And I thought, just randomly open one before I close my computer and go on to something else. And the very first one was about a man at an event, a Ramtha event, and that he approached another event attendee, and at some point during this interaction asked the man if he wanted to purchase hand grenades and rifles and ammunition. And I was like, huh, that's different.
At the next UFO Congress.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
get your gun.
And so,
Sponsored by the NRA.
yeah, I thought, I guess, a lot of cowboys in Washington or something. I don't know. And then he went on, as I systematically read through these records, I found that this man had a recurring problem with not staying away from the ranch after he was trespassed and told, don't nobody in here need no hand grenades, stay away. He continued coming back and even climbed over the wall and got within about 70 yards of her home at one point, and really had no coherent reasons for why he claimed to be doing this, other than this particular man said that the fathers told him to do it, that he seemed to
Yeah.
some spiritual advisors, um, physical or non-physical, were directing his actions. And this was a recurring theme. As Erica is showing there, some of these files that we obtained were digital clips, video clips, audio clips of law enforcement interviews with witnesses and um, security guards and things. And it's just an ongoing thing that people drive trucks through the gate, will then physically fight with law enforcement officers that have to um, subdue them. Some of the digital images, yeah, like there, the gentleman on the left, one can see that he has the taser things attached to his clothing and whatnot that were apparently used to get him into the car, and the police car. And they documented law enforcement, um, at least um, surface injuries and abrasions from what was a pretty radical tussle with a big guy that was set on getting in the compound. And yeah, and this just occurred repeatedly. They had one man that was under the impression, he became convinced that Ms. Knight was being held against her will, and he tried to cut through the gate to get in to release her. And security guards confronted him trying to cut a hole in the gate and asked him what he was doing. And he explained that and left because they threatened to call the police. And he came back the same day, drove through the gate, and it's just clearly problematic. In UFO circles, we always have this thing, this debate, as they do in other fringe topics and other aspects of our culture, as to how much is the topic responsible for the behavior or the triggering of people that are already disturbed or suffering from some type of mental illness or distress. That can be argued. It's certainly not helping. Um, there's a lot of gray, pardon the pun, ethical issues here with schools of channeling and psychic phenomena. And one could reasonably presume anyone that can ante up the money is not going to be turned away, and apparently may proceed to try to sell hand grenades. Who knows?
It's just I mean, it is amazing, and I think it is. It does. This is such an interesting field, you know, whether it's conspiracies, whether UFOs, paranormal. I mean, it is an interesting backdoor into a lot of nefarious things, and that's it can be. I think there might be a reason that the FBI and law enforcement would be interested in this topic. It would be an example like that.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly would be. It kind of interested me as well that maybe the paradigm changes over time, maybe the culture, the law enforcement attitudes change. I don't know anything about Thurston County law enforcement, so I'm not in a position to speak to their culture. But compared to what I at least perceive from reading the news and hearing about law enforcement violence, Thurston County seemed to be rather tolerant with these people breaking into the Ramtha compound. I can only speculate why that would be. Um, but suffice it to say, if big, healthy police officers, security guards, it takes multiple people like that to get a man subdued and into the back of a police car. I just would expect the perpetrator to end up much injured, much more injured than that in some other scenarios. And it just, as I kept reading through these things, I wondered, I couldn't help but wonder, what kind of relationship local law enforcement has with Ms. Knight. You know, are they considered on good terms? How good of terms? Are they sick of it? Do they really resent her? And that like we can have that debate about whether a fringe topic triggers more erratic behavior from distressed people or not, but obviously encouraging them to think they're hearing voices in their head that are directing their activities is not a good thing as compared to doing public service announcements about how to get proper treatment from qualified mental health professionals, you know. So I was just curious about how none of these people seem to end up beaten much worse than they are, or whatever happens to them, or is it just, you know, like an acceptable thing that, you know, we're just going to have to arrest this guy a couple times a year till he gets tired of climbing the wall at Jay-Z Knight's place, you know?
I think the problem is, though, I mean, there is a real issue with this. People that are capable of doing those types of things don't care about the repercussions with law enforcement. It's like, okay, I got away with it, got, you know, slap on the hand, whatever, spent the night in jail, and then they continue to escalate their behaviors. So unfortunately, people that are of that mindset don't care about laws or
Not at all.
out.
No. Some of them don't care. Some of them aren't able to care. The man that I mentioned that went back twice in one day, he had even had a visit from law enforcement that notified him charges were going to be pressed by this lady that you're claiming you're rescuing. She's pressing charges. And he went back and drove through the gate and was unsuccessfully got through the gate. His van was hung up on the gate, and he was just still sitting in the driver's side of the van when police arrived. I had my doubts that he even had the ability to, like obviously the compulsion for whatever it is he's doing is greater than his ability to weigh the consequence. Like he's not able, and or like you're saying, doesn't care about
Right.
thinking.
Well, and there are people like that, I mean, obviously, I mean, people that have no concern for that and view like this escalating behavior as a game or something that is exciting and things like that. I mean, and at the end of the day, protective orders, different things like that mean virtually nothing to somebody who's showing time and time again they don't care about those things. And so that's got to be that is interesting with that when you're that large of a figure and you have people like that coming after you, breaking in. And I'm not saying, that must be alarming, but also her behavior has been alarming. Not that this is an excuse for anything, but she is a very interesting individual. And I want to just note that Phil Leach is in chat, and he's been mentioning, Jan Harzan and his ability to fundraise and do things. And that's when under MUFON, when Jan Harzan was the executive director, that's when things came to light about all of this, the racism and Jay-Z Knight's contributions and things. And so it was also, I do believe that Jan Harzan had gone to one of her events, from what I was told back then. And speaking of, and I want to just throw this out to Phil. Phil, have you heard what happened in Mr. Harzan's trial? Because that was apparently, I think, maybe a week ago. If anybody has any updates on that, let us know. Thank you very much. So and Phil is just saying that he went every year to her. Huh. Okay.
Yeah. And before we move on, I'd like to speak a little more to your point about the behavior that escalates, because I know you personally know about some of this, and it does deserve to be discussed a little further, I think, as well as I just think it's interesting what we were able to learn from the police records around Ramtha was the very man I'm describing that had gone back twice in the same day and then was arrested, crashed through the gate, was a former student. And then he got even more violent in the coming months. He started threatening a male who was employed at the school and leaving messages on his voicemail that profane and threatened to kill him in no uncertain terms and with urgency. And law enforcement confronted the man in the parking lot of a grocery store. They caught up with him and arrested him. And absolutely, it just keeps escalating. Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting on multiple fronts. But if you, for all of you guys out there, make sure that you go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org to subscribe to our email list, and also check out the great blogs that we've been putting up. And again, Jack, thank you for your incredible work. I can't think of a better research partner, because you really get in there and you know how to do FOIA requests, you know how to do grammar requests, you know how to get information that should be transparent and openly available, if you know the right ways to go about that, and have persistence to make sure, like with our the UFO Phenomenon series that we did, that you were you were incredible with that. You went to Alicia Coltharp and did great work getting information from these people. And so that's been great to see. So definitely check out those blogs that we put out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I enjoy doing it. It's fun when it hits, like it did with Phenomenon, like it did with Thurston County and the Ramtha School of Enlightenment. It's interesting. And what does most motivate me is people like you, Erica, that find it interesting and appreciate it. And so at Expanding Frontiers, we're also helping other researchers that we're in touch with behind the scenes, and doing some FOIA requests for them and just going through the process. The subject of the request is really not even that important to me, as much as I like sharpening my skills around the process, and taking a request, submitting it to an agency, and then systematically carrying it out as far as I reasonably can. And so that is very rewarding to me. And thank you for appreciating that, Erica.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really is. Having done, requests for specific records here in Salt Lake and with military, it's been an interesting process that everybody no matter what you do, whatever area that you have, you're an interest in. I mean, these are things that we can all do and learn about in your community. If you think that things aren't above board, you can do local records requests and hold elected officials accountable for their actions, and I think, or their the misappropriation of taxpayer funding, all of these things. I think it's a real fine thing to understand how to do. And so thank you, UFO John Doe. That's totally awesome. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's really cool. So that's awesome. And Peter is asking a question here really quickly. Erica, do you know of a UFO cult in Utah during World War I, which was investigated by the FBI? No.
Yes, World War I, he says.
Okay.
Do you, Erica?
No, I don't.
Off the top of my head, I don't either. We do have some requests out that go back as far as mid-20th century, and some of those may be older, but we will keep an eye on that.
Well, thank you, Peter. The head of the cult was named Falkenberg. Well, that seems rather fitting. Interesting. I've never heard of that. So, Peter, you need to send me some more information on that, because I'll definitely be looking into that. And that was one of the things that's always been very interesting to me, especially when I started digging into the UFO stuff and became state director for MUFON. The lack of information about what goes on in Utah. I mean, you could very rarely find newspaper clippings or articles. It was pretty infrequent that you would get people allegedly entering sightings reports into the database. Who knows where they were going at the end of the day, but it was very strange to me as a researcher that you couldn't find a lot of information. And even Barry Greenwood, who is Mr. Newspaper Clip, I mean, anything he could find, he looked for things with regard to Utah and could find really next to nothing compared to other states. So I find that interesting, but I'm on it, Peter. We'll figure it out. So, okay, and I'm just trying to look at all the rest of the questions. So yeah, and the data center, yep, we've got a lot of stuff going on here in Utah, a lot of reasons why information probably wouldn't be getting out. Oh, and the Arthurius Society, my visit, yes, I did go to the Arthurius Society, and that was very interesting. I went there with Greg Bishop a few years back when I was down in LA, I believe, doing a lecture. So yeah, I'll have to show my pictures and things and talk about that sometime. That's an interesting group of people, interesting cult, I guess you would say. So
we might as well stick with Utah, huh? And go to the latest blog post. You ready for that one?
Oh, my Lord, hang on. Let me find it, because it's never a dull moment. We will go to Utah. Oh, I love it. It's just so much fun. All right, hang on. So we're going to share the screen. Okay, so here we go. Utah has long been known as one of the biggest places for fraud and multi-level marketing schemes in the country, and it seems like a very common practice to set up organizations, nonprofits, to steer people in a specific direction, get taxpayer or not, to get funding, donations, things like that, and taxpayer support. But there's a really interesting case. Most of you have heard about this. It's Tim Ballard, who has been in the news as of late. And he was the head of Operation Underground Railroad, which was an organization allegedly designed to thwart child sex trafficking. And his organization would put on basically little live action role playing shows where they would get donors or church leaders, the LDS church leaders, a specific leader. They would go down to South America, and then these people would think that they were involved with trying to rescue children that were sex trafficked, this is a horrible situation, but there's nothing of merit from the great investigative work that we've seen from many people. Robert Gehrke, Nate Carlisle, Fox 13 has done a great deal of work. And then Lynn Ballard has done great work as well. Lynn Packer, thank you. Excuse me, I'm getting everybody mixed up here, but Lynn Packer is an investigative journalist who started shining a spotlight on the organization, on some of the people in the Utah business community who were not operating above board. There's a very small group of people who are in that group, and you can imagine in Utah who might be involved in that as well. So you've got people who are making lots of money, who are putting on these shows for people, for their patrons. And from my understanding, I've been in contact with a couple different people that know kind of some of the things behind the scenes. I mean, these were the people that were involved in this were paid to play a role, to be actors when Tim Ballard and his group went down there. And there are also the news stories coming out about his sexual abuse, his grooming and alleged sexual abuse. And so you can definitely read about that. And I want to just hang on really quickly before we get into this a little bit more. I want to just go into really quickly. This is the highlight from KSL. They did a news story, and it is U.S. Attorney General response to Tim Ballard allegations. So Sean Reyes is the Attorney General. He was on the board of R and Operation Underground Railroad, and has been in the spotlight as of late because of this conflict of interest that he had serving on this board. And now all these allegations are coming out. And interestingly enough, Sean Reyes was also, you can see we'll show some pictures. He was also involved. He's also involved with another figure here in Utah, but this is what the story from KSL, the tagline for this, it's a Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes issued a lengthy statement Wednesday in response to a lawsuit against Operation Underground Railroad founder Tim Ballard. Reyes wasn't named as a defendant in the suit, which alleges Ballard sexually assaulted several women and made fraudulent statements to coerce them into sexual contact. But the complaint alleges Reyes' friendship with Ballard gave credibility to Ballard and R that was not warranted. Reyes said he was unaware of the allegations that Ballard, the so-called couple's ruse to groom and sexually assault women posing as his wife on underground missions. And so there, if you go look at the news, it's all over the place. Again, Utah makes national news and never for the right reasons. And so it is really interesting. So thanks for letting me just kind of go into that. And then you can go to our article, which I'm showing on the screen here, and look at some of the highlights. And I'm going to just scroll right here. Here we've got a great screenshot that was taken from, you got that from, which article was that? I'm sorry, I can't read.
That one is a tweet from 2022. It was featured in a Robert Gurkey article
From
too.
Salt Lake Tribune.
Yeah, I'm sure it was featured at the Trib about A.G. Reyes participating on a Skinwalker Ranch panel at FanX, a comic convention. And other authors and writers had pointed out that the attorney general, the Utah attorney general, seemed to be quite fond of Skinwalker Ranch and its dubious claims, going as far as to appear in episodes on the show at least a couple of times. Now, as Erica pointed out, the Ballard case is complicated and ties into a problem that Utah is having with anti-human trafficking groups. In the same tendencies that groups can have to actually be harmful to the demographic that they're supposed to be protecting. There are concerns about that in Utah about some of the anti-human trafficking groups, or at a bare minimum, the behavior of some of the people in the movement are causing harm to the reputation of the anti-human trafficking industry. Among them is there were recently 31 felony counts leveled against the director of a group called Exodus that all grew out of an initial investigation of fraud. And so now Ballard's behavior and bringing more public scrutiny against the anti-human trafficking lobby and nonprofit sector in Utah is harmful. So part of that's a whole story in itself. Then Attorney General Reyes recently, collaborating with Utah Governor Spencer Cox, filed a lawsuit and pending legal action against TikTok, the social media site. They assert that TikTok is acting with deception and potential harm against the public in the way that it operates its platform. While this has been happening and Attorney General Reyes has been having press conferences about it, certain reporters, such as those at Fox 13 Utah, have tried to ask the Attorney General more about his involvement with Ballard, who he endorsed prior to Ballard's pending fall from grace. And Reyes doesn't want to address that stuff, leading some to think that his getting TikTok in his sites might now be a distraction and a means to try to turn the narrative to Reyes being anti-crime, trying to support families and things like that. Expanding Frontiers Research, or certainly Jack Brewer, doesn't have a position on that one way or the other, as compared to simply pointing out its significance, as he is involved and has been involved with Skinwalker Ranch. The apparent hypocrisy of that should seem rather obvious, in that it's somewhat selective, or at least a lack of uniformity in applying concern to potential public danger, and certainly deception in that none of the sensational skinwalker claims can be verified. And as Stephen Greenstreet has accurately reported, the Attorney General's office did not even want to comment at length in the past, much less now, on the Attorney General Reyes's involvement with Skinwalker Ranch and why he would be endorsing these uncritical and unverified claims. So all of that comes at issue when the reasons stated for going after TikTok are that it's deceptive and that it is potentially harming the public and acting in ways that ignore that harm and continuing with its operations. So my last thing that I would present for consideration is, as Expanding Frontiers, Stephen Greenstreet, and others have accurately reported, members of the Skinwalker Ranch television cast adamantly make assertions about Havana syndrome like injuries, deadly purported contagions that can be passed around, that they claim to not understand how these are passed or how they work. Our reporting found that they have sought no help from outside agencies such as Utah environmental agencies and things like that, radiation agencies. So these kind of things deserve to be taken into consideration and scrutinized at length about this selective concern for public safety. As we reported in our past articles, there have been a number of dubious claims about head injuries, nausea, things that take place at the ranch. Yet the public is then interacting with these people that report these injuries and illnesses. At the same time, the members of the Skinwalker television cast have made assertions that this phenomena that they call a hitchhiker effect is contagious and can be passed. And they cite circumstances where they purport people believed that it was deadly. Dr. Travis Taylor purports to have had a conversation with Robert Bigelow where Robert Bigelow allegedly attributed his wife's death to such phenomena. It is difficult to understand how Attorney General Reyes could be concerned about deception and public harm while endorsing such circumstances. So that's something that Expanding Frontiers we felt deserves more attention in this complex story of religion and purported anti-human trafficking groups and all of these different people and organizations that I've mentioned and alluded to have feelers and threads that go out in multiple directions. So our latest blog post just kind of touched on the primary issues and the circumstances that allow the reader to gain a basic understanding of what is taking place. And I would also say that in the grand scheme of things, that Skinwalker Ranch factor may be relatively unimportant to Attorney General Reyes and his involvement with Tim Ballard and the legal adversity that is coming upon these people involved in the anti-human trafficking industry in Utah. So it's a complex series of events that it's really difficult to understand why Attorney General Reyes would have ever wanted to endorse these things to do with Skinwalker Ranch and get involved with it, other than, as Erica alluded to and speaks about frequently, there is an apparent hierarchy within Utah, and it certainly has to do with the Mormon Church, and that is certainly covered lengthily by very capable local news reporters, such as employed at the Salt Lake Tribune and Fox 13 News Utah, that are doing very good jobs covering these stories. So all of that just kind of ties into the work that we're doing on FOIA requests and covering events in Erica's native area. One of the reasons I was initially interested in interacting with Erica and working with her on a ongoing organization like Expanding Frontiers was that I identified her as probably the most informed about the fringe Skinwalker Ranch and other things going on in the Utah region, Salt Lake region, the Uinta Basin, without being an actual person that is like one of the television cast members. I felt like that she had more contacts and more knowledge of the history and had been there for so much of it, predating some of the people that are even considered high profile and in it now. So we had started interacting and working on different FOIA requests and things. And that was part of my reason for being particularly interested in interacting with Erica, was that she had so many contacts and had so much insight into the circumstances that it helped supply me with ideas and subject matter for FOIA requests and who to contact for comment on different articles and issues. And it became apparent to me that there is going to be no resolution about if there are extraordinary exotic craft flying the skies that are not man-made, non-human intelligence. It seemed apparent to me that all of the stories about indigenous cultures and the legends that come out of that, there's going to be no resolution about the validity of those stories. It was also apparent to me that these stories were being manipulated and exploited, and words were being put in the mouths of indigenous cultures and indigenous people for what seemed to be a number of different agendas. So, given all of those circumstances, I wanted to write more about it and explore it, that which we can actually sink our teeth into. And given that there's going to be no resolution about what people claim to have seen in the middle of the night, under these extraordinary circumstances, the kind of things that became associated with reports from the Uinta Basin. I wanted to find what people would say about things people were doing and how much that could be verified. And the way that's done is through newspaper clippings, through authenticated documents that are obtained through the Freedom of Information Act. That's how we find out what people have been doing, even if that is just what the statement is. And I feel like I learned a lot about that from doing FOIA requests and reading FBI records, not just because of what's in the requests themselves, but the way the FBI special agents often compose their reports. The act of even reading the FOIA records can be really interesting in itself, in that the special agents are often not professional writers, they're not journalists, they're not writing for entertainment purposes. So sometimes one has to really pay attention to the report. And it can get complicated in that the special agent will write about they interviewed person A who told them about person B who said something about person C. And it's all just this big black wall of text. So you have to just really slow down and pay attention. And I found that really interesting in the whole topic, that the special agents would go to great pains to make sure they were reporting to their upline and ultimately the FBI director what people said and differentiating that from what they knew to be true. And those kinds of things became very interesting to me. And Erica, I was just talking about your value about what has been taking place in Utah and the Uinta Basin, and how we began working together, and that I was interested in. You could kind of give me direction about what you found of value. You had contacts, and then how that ties into reading the FOIA requests and like paying attention to what we can sink our teeth into. What can we really learn that was going on, instead of just doing as Ronilyn wrote and others have aptly pointed out, just this never-ending cycle of stories of what people said, just over and over and over.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's been the one, I mean, that's been fun for me to work with you, as I've stated so many times, because we both complement each other on your skill set, my skill set, my knowledge of people in Utah, and having lived here my whole life, and seeing some of the games and seeing the news on a daily basis here. There are definitely things that we've been really successful at looking into and shining a spotlight on, and I think that's really been a lot of fun. There's definitely, as you know, we're talking about with the blog, mentioning Candace Riviera and Exodus and some of these things that are taking place. Utah, like I mentioned, is a real hotbed for this type of activity. And, I want to go back to or talk a little bit about Joe Firmage and how, all of the Firmage debacle and his company, his Motion Sciences, and the involvement of Brandon Fugel and Kit Green, some of these people with this gyroscope and the way that, allegedly people were bilked out of millions of dollars that never really seemed to come to a head publicly. And it would be great if we could do some more digging, which we have been, and we're going to continue to do that. And also, if other people who are in the media want to do some digging into that as well, that's another example of millions of dollars being bilked out of people that I interviewed during that time period when I was looking into it, people that had worked with this organization who had not been paid and who had lost a great deal of money. There were a lot of similar things going on to what we see now with Operation Underground Railroad and Tim Ballard. And so that would definitely be worth, I do believe that is worthy of looking into again as well, especially given all that is coming to light about what we mentioned in the blog post, Exodus, about Operation Underground Railroad and things. So I think it's definitely, and I won't talk about Utah again. I see all of your comments in chat. So anyway, I love you guys, and I love your sense of humor. But anyway, yes. So lots of good stuff going on here.
Well, yeah, absolutely. That's the kind of thing I was talking about is what can we actually sink our teeth into? And the answer to that is with Joseph Firmage and his associates, the answer to that is court records obtained from the United States Stock Exchange Commission. These are the things, as we spoke about earlier, that those that are financially supporting our organization, this is what your money goes towards, is the fees associated with obtaining copies of FOIA requests that have never been processed before. And it almost defies explanation to me that we start digging into the SEC and Mini One, which was a Joseph Firmage corporation, and that all these dozens and dozens, hundreds, thousands of people that were so interested in UFOs have never asked for any of this material before. How's that work? But that's a rhetorical question. I'll just keep moving. And that's what we can sink our teeth into. And that's the same kind of thing like with Phenomenon, that I get on the phone with public officials that want to dazzle me with stories about Bigfoot and how cool it is to talk to people on television. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. How about those financials?
Right.
That's what is real about this situation. And what the SEC records tell us about Mini One and Joseph Firmage's, their investigation into his activities, was that they had witnesses that told the SEC that $59 million got run through. $59 million. And people still want to talk about anti-gravity and things like that. Is pretty baffling to me. And again, just reiterates some of the points that Ronilyn McDonald was making in 1967. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And let me just say, Lou, thank you so much for the super sticker. And you were mentioning, let me just go back to that really quickly, just so we can answer this. What do we think of the Monsters of California production? promo budget of an estimated $42 to $84 million if I research this potential fraud. And no, I haven't. But thank you for letting us know about that. I'll definitely do some digging in my free time. There's so many things to look into. And Lou, if you could just in chat really quickly, just let us know what that is about and what you're finding. That's great. I appreciate the tip. And I also appreciate your super sticker. Thank you. It's nice to have you here tonight. So
he's alluding to Tom DeLonge's production.
okay. Oh Lord, have mercy. Okay.
I have not seen that. I don't even want to repeat things I've heard because I don't know those to be true. But I would agree with Erica that that's a worthy direction of study. And yes, those are things that as researchers we can sink our teeth into, asking the Army how much money was paid to the stars, asking what they got in return, what were the deliverables. And it's either subject to release under the Freedom of Information Act or it's not. And I mean, that's that, really. It's one of the things I really like about the FOIA is it's impersonal. It doesn't, there's no point in arguing with FOIA officers or public officials or fighting with them. It just comes down to, look, is this releasable under the public records laws or not? And that's kind of the bottom line.
Well, I clearly know what I'll be watching tonight. Well, maybe not. Try as I might. I mean, it's just like this whole thing is such an amazing scam. And, I want to go back to, because I was putting together a video about cults, which hopefully I'll play next time I do the show. But, just like with Ramtha and some of the religious cults that you see, the New Age cults that we were talking about, the spirituality things, we've got, a whole bunch of interesting figures who popped up on YouTube and all over the place that are claiming to have great knowledge about personal healing and just sign up for the workshop. It's a lot of like Tony Robbins kind of stuff. But yeah, it's there's so many ways to scam people, and I think it's really unfortunate that so much of this is taking place. But it's really good that everybody here in chat is paying attention to that and understands the risks of going headlong into specific things without understanding where you're going or who's pulling the strings and for what potential reason.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I'll kind of segue with that into Erica and I just regularly submit FOIA requests, and just in the course of a day, as topics come across my desk or my screen, I'll just drop FOIA requests on it. And a few months ago, we did a request to the FBI on the UFO Research Coalition. That is a group that started in 1994. It's registered with IRS, and what was supposed to help different UFO organizations work together. I recommend learning more about it at our friend of the program, Smiles Lewis's Anomaly Archives. He has some information on them. Thank you, Erica. Mm-hmm. And we got a response on this. So listen up, folks. We're going to ask for your help if you want to get involved and do some research with us. This is a great chance to let us all kind of work together and see how things go and maybe build on some relationships and some investigative relationships from here. What this is the letter of final response from the FBI, and it informs us. If you look down below those boxes that are checked. The first line tells us that they are enclosing 2 of 4 responsive pages. So right off the bat, that tells us that they fully withheld 2 pages. Now, those boxes that are checked inform us what exemptions they use, what their justification is for withholding the pages, as well as on the 2 pages they gave us, it's pretty heavily redacted or blocked out. And they cite 2 exemptions, and to make a long story short, they relate to privacy, unreasonable invasions of privacy. So we have already filed a appeal about the withholding of the material, and we are waiting on a response on that from the Office of Information Policy with the Department of Justice that handles appeals. Interestingly, that letter also told us that more responsive records, potentially responsive records, were identified, but were not in the locations that they were expected to be. So basically, they lost some or destroyed it and didn't make proper notes of destroying it. And so there was more material probably on the UFO Research Coalition. But then of the pages that they gave us, that's the one that tells us there. The paragraph at the top explains that there was more material that they sought but were not able to locate. After a couple of tries, they tried to find it but couldn't locate it. But then, and I should have said, all of you can access this material. Go to expandingfrontiersresearch.org. At the top of the page, there's a menu. Click on Archive. And then in the archive, there are various collections. And this one has been added to the FOIA documents collection. So the UFO Research Coalition documents have been added to that. So you can view that response as well as the 2 pages that we got, which is in another PDF. And as I was talking about a little bit ago, sometimes this can get kind of like a puzzle to even read what the special agents were communicating, especially when a lot of it is redacted, and you kind of have this puzzle to figure out, okay, who is this about and who is that about? And you start with like, okay, he gave us this name and he gave us that name, but then they're redacting these names. Why would they be doing that? And you're like trying to figure out the puzzle. And interestingly, of the 2 pages that they gave us, UFO Research Coalition is not even referenced. So we don't know why this was responsive to the URC. There is a reference to Walt Andrus, who was the director of MUFON at the time. It's a 1996, I believe, document where special agents were obviously investigating something and spoke to Walt Andrus, who told them about some other men that they were apparently investigating. And this involved someone being accused of holding someone against their will or kidnapping. That is, you can clearly read that much. You can also get to a point where there's a reference to someone who was basically kicked out of MUFON in 1993. So there's various clues here as to what this investigation may have been about, that a diligent researcher could probably find more about. There may even be someone listening that knows this story that would not even need to read the records to be able to say, yeah, I was involved at that time, and here's what that was about. So I thought it might be interesting if anyone wants to help us with an open source investigation about this. We're not interested in spreading rumors or irresponsibly publishing anything that someone just says as hearsay or whatever. But this is the kind of thing that we've been discussing that a researcher can sink their teeth into. And it's not going to be about flying saucers or dogmen sticking their heads through portals in the Utah desert, but it is about an actual FBI investigation that had something to do with people that had some involvement with MUFON, and
Fascinating.
and involved, well, for some reason was responsive to UFO Research Coalition.
So I just want to say really quickly that I think Rachel is in on our site trying to find the specific documents that we're referencing, and she can't seem to find them. Can you give her a little?
Click on archive at the top of the page. Then when you go to archive, click on FOIA documents. And then that it's the last entry at the bottom of the page, UFO Research Coalition.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
And then there's a link to a folder there that contains the FBI letter of response to us, as well as the records that it gave us.
Okay, perfect. And Rachel might have been looking actually for something different, but anyway, there you have that. So thank you very much. Oh, she's not seeing it still. Anyway, we will. Anyway, Rachel, I'll get in touch with you after the show. I need to talk to you anyway. I hear you're starting a fun new venture. But I want to really quickly, because we're getting ready to wrap up the show, I want to just talk about the eclipse tomorrow. And I'm so excited for this. This is going to be so cool. So we have here in Utah, it will be visible. There is a solar eclipse that is taking place, and I'm going to share this. So here you've got the path, and this was from, I believe, NASA's website. And so you can see the path starting up here and going down through Texas. And so this is going to be really, really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing this with my friend Matt Hepworth, who's been on the show many times. He's been my research partner in crime. And a few years back, there was an eclipse. I've got to show you this picture. And so this is what we did during the eclipse. We laid on the sidewalk, took selfies, but it was so cool because you can see the little teeny, you can see the half shapes, of what the eclipse was doing with the foliage. We were underneath a tree. And so we thought we had a great time. And so Matt is a brilliant photographer and videographer. He's been, oh my goodness, he's been to some interesting locations, including going up and documenting specific investigations that I had done around Skinwalker Ranch for many, many years. So we've got some great stuff with that, but it'll be fun to see the eclipse. And I'd be interested to know if any of you in chat are actually going to be watching the eclipse tomorrow. It's really an interesting event, and I want to just read a little bit about what will happen during the eclipse because I think this is super cool. But it looks like, so obviously this is taking place from Oregon to Texas, and one of the things that happens is puffy clouds flatten, which I think is very interesting. And then also there is, if any of you guys have been, if you've seen an eclipse or been a part of that, there's like an eerie dimness, and that is absolutely true. It was crazy to me to see some of the things that took place when that was happening. And then also because, there's a silence that everything just kind of shuts down around you. It's really interesting. Jack, have you ever seen a solar eclipse?
I have. None particularly stand out in my memory. I haven't had one of those experiences like you're describing, or like Sarah Scoles describes in her book, that was particularly intriguing or fascinating. But yes, I have watched the moon go in front of the sun. Yes.
Yeah, and it's going to be so exciting. And Rachel was just saying, so this is an annular eclipse too, so the sun is visible around the moon. I mean, it's just going to be, I'm so excited. So this takes place in the morning, and I'll be out there with my friend, and we'll have our little glasses on, and he's got his camera equipment and things, so it'll be fun to have that happen. I'm looking forward to it. So that's my thing. Oh, and it's overcast there. Dang it! We were supposed to have overcast weather here too, but it's clearing up. So I'm hoping we'll have good visibility. If nothing else, it'll be fun to hang out with my friend. But anyway, that's that. And so, Jack, any closing thoughts about some of the things that we've talked about tonight, and about future FOIA releases that we will be putting forward?
Yes, thank you. Again, I really appreciate everyone in chat. Rachel, I did just take a glance at the website, and I see that something is unusual. So as soon as we wrap up the show, I'll jump on there and see if I can get that, get the UFO Research Coalition documents accessible. Thank you. We really appreciate everybody in chat. Thanks for being here. We are going to be receiving a number of more records on cults and from law enforcement agencies. And we really haven't even gotten into the big ones. I mean, we're looking at some of the lesser known ones, or those that tend to be involved with UFOs and fringe stuff. I mean, when you think cults, maybe Manson comes to mind, maybe Heaven's Gate, things like that. And I don't know how much we'll even go into that, because there has already been so much competently reported on them. Maybe some summaries are in order, but nonetheless, we are looking at some organizations that have formidable followings, but just haven't done anything like committed mass suicide yet or anything like that. But I mean, it's how it happens. As we were both talking about, things just keep escalating. Some of them have been operating like 100 years or more, that go through different figureheads, and different people see opportunities and come along and seize them. But so we're looking into cults. We've got a number of FOIA requests still outstanding that are on some other issues as well. We're submitting them weekly, if not daily, and are looking forward to lots more interesting stuff that we can sink our teeth into, that we're not just spinning our tires and grinding gears and discussing what people say about each other.
Right. No, I think that's so good. And I love doing this with you, Jack. I think it is really, it's always fun. You always are engaging, and you keep my mind working. And like I mentioned earlier, and I'll mention it again, we are really nice. We have a nice collaboration together. And I really appreciate what we've brainstormed on, what we talk about, some of the things that we're working on. And I think that this is really critical to understand a lot of things that are going on. And we also have, with Expanding Frontiers Research, kind of broadened our area of focus, which is important as well. And we'll be talking about different environmental issues. In fact, I just want to mention that a week and a half ago, I went to a fundraiser for Heal Utah, which is a great nonprofit here in Utah that is dedicated to a healthy environment and monitors what happens with radioactive waste, what is happening with the declining water, and the threats impacts to all of us, and the ecosystem with the Great Salt Lake. And it's just really wonderful to have organizations like that, that I can support here locally. So I want to give Heal Utah a shout out. Thanks for the wonderful party. And the fun. It was great to meet everybody. So I'm looking forward to more of that. And Expanding Frontiers, like I said, we'll be talking about some of these issues that are important to, myself, to you, to the community, and to people who are very clearly activists with regard to the way people or human beings are treated, to how the environment is treated. You have a special fondness for Gitmo and things that's special. You have looked into that, and you want to continue to look into that and the way prisoners were mistreated and things. There's so many fabulous areas to look into, and I feel really grateful that we can do that together. And I also feel grateful to all of you in chat who help, who are here every time we have a show, who donate to the show. So thank you, Michael, Mario. Thanks for the super stickers, and then thanks for the support behind the scenes. This is really great. This, to me, when I have done this over the years, this has not been, about anything more than getting to the truth and helping other people understand that, and to see my journey to go through that, learn from my mistakes, because I'm very forthright about them. The whole world knows, about that. And through our work at Expanding Frontiers, we'll continue to shine a light on things and to give people the tools to understand specific situations and hopefully, have positive experiences. And so I look forward to a 2024 for many reasons. It's going to be such a great year. It's already, actually, the past 2 days have been pretty good too. So I'm excited about that. Some good things are happening. And so I appreciate you guys. And Ken, nice to see you. I hope you're doing well. And all of you guys, thank you. Good luck watching the eclipse. So that'll be fun. But I want to just also really quickly say that when, and I appreciate Peter so much for posting the show. I won't have a show next Friday, but you can definitely count on me the Friday after that. So from here until probably the end of the year, I might be doing every other week. So make sure you're checking with the schedule on that. I've got some personal things that are going on that I am attending to. But we also have interviews, hopefully keeping our fingers crossed, with one of the people that I mentioned tonight in our broadcast. And so we're going to hope that happens. That'll be good. But make sure that you click like, subscribe, and donate if you feel so inclined. Thanks all of you guys for being here. And so, yeah, anyway, love you guys. Any closing thoughts, Jack?
Again, thanks to everybody. And yeah, the environment, the human rights, these are important issues. Always follow the money. It's always about the money, everybody. And we hope to expand our frontiers into some other areas. And we are soliciting funding from some national agencies, and hope to be doing more of that, getting more involved, continuing on our journey. And cheers, Erica. Thank you.
Cheers to you. And good night to all of you. We will catch you in a couple weeks. And Jack and I, like I said, we've got some fun things going on. We've been working on behind the scenes, along with a news segment that we might be doing, which we'll talk about that next time. So you guys have a wonderful evening, and we will catch you next time. Bye.